Welcome to Uncopyable Women in Sales. If you're looking for actionable insights and real-world tools to turbocharge your sales starting tomorrow, well, you're in the right place. Your host, Kay Miller, earned the affectionate nickname Muffler Mama when she sold more automotive mufflers than anyone else in the world. In this podcast, Kay will talk to another superstar woman in sales as they reveal uncopyable strategies you can use to rack up more leads, snag dream clients, and take your sales numbers through the roof. Stay tuned and get ready to make more sales and how about this? More money.
Today, I am excited to talk with Heidi Solomon Orlick. Heidi is an award-winning 35-year veteran in professional sales and the founder and CEO of Girls Who Sell. After a career in sales, she now serves as Chief Revenue Officer for the Doors Group, powered by Keller Williams. Heidi is the inspiration, editor, and author of the highly acclaimed book, Heels to Deals: How Women Are Dominating in Business-to-Business Sales. Heidi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Kay. I'm so grateful to be here. Appreciate it.
I'm very happy to have you on. As I said, I read your book, Heels to Deals, which is a compilation of stories from other women, which are fascinating. Also, some insights into your career, which I'd like to get into a little bit. But what a great project. And maybe we can talk about how that happened. But it's very inspiring and encouraging to hear from these amazing women who are also, I noticed, are very diverse, which I love. So, Heidi, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah. So, as you and I were talking about as we were prepping, I actually was started my career out of college in advertising and marketing and direct marketing. I worked for an ad agency, a bunch of different ad agencies actually in California. And, if you know anything about the ad agency business, one, it's incredibly male dominated. It was and continues to be. And two, it's very competitive. So they sort of, eat you up and chew you out and burn you out. And so after being fast tracked for about 10 years, I sort of burned out, to be honest. And I really had no idea what I was going to do with my career. My dad, who was my inspiration, he was an entrepreneur and master sales executive, had told me when I was young that I should not go into sales, that sales is for men. It's a man's sport, quote unquote. And, even though I wanted to someday run his business, he was not going to have that. So sales was not an intentional career choice for me. But like so many other women in my, early 30s, I fell into it and was given an opportunity to join an enterprise sales organization as vice president of sales. And that was the start of a 35-year career in business process outsourcing. And and I was definitely the only woman in the room, and frequently still am, actually. BPO industry, similar to tech sales, is very male dominated. And so I really wanted to do something to empower young women, and like they're doing with STEM, position sales as a viable career alternative for women from diverse backgrounds who want to achieve financial and economic independence.
Sales is such a fantastic career, really. I was struck by how many of the women that were in your book just really recommend it. Consider a career in sales, or, women are great at sales and for various reasons. One thing that you mentioned your dad, and I know in the book you said he was a great storyteller. In fact, he came up with some great bedtime stories that really got you thinking about different situations and how you would react and respond. And that was a great training ground, I'm sure, for you, because you are, in fact, a great storyteller. And besides the male dominated part, let's talk a little bit about how has that served you in your sales career?
Right. He was a brilliant storyteller. And when I was young, he was on the road a lot, right? So he traveled quite a bit. But when he was home, he was a very dedicated, passionate father. And every night before I would go to bed, he would tell me stories about a family of elephants called Mumbo, Jumbo, and Dumbo. And of course, Dumbo was the baby, and she was very precocious and always getting herself into trouble. And he would make up these fabulous stories about this family that had to overcome all of these obstacles. And we would co-create the stories together at night on, okay, so this is the problem she found herself in. And so what are ways that she could potentially get out of this, disastrous situation that she found herself in? And how does she use those solutions? Yeah, like use those solutions to change the course. And so it was really awesome. I mean, I didn't realize at the time that I was actually learning some core skills, not just in sales, but life skills that could be utilized for the rest of my life. And how that's translated is, I believe that that's really what sales is all about. We, in Girls Who Sell Academy, and when I speak to a lot of young women, both college and high school age young women, I speak a lot about demystifying and debunking some of the myths, perceived myths of what sales actually is. And it's really, in my mind anyway, about serving, right? And so that was a big part of the stories that my dad used to tell me. It was a lot about how do you give back and how do you serve others, which was a core value that was instilled in me at a very young age. But also it was about problem solving. And I do believe that the core of sales is about, trying to help clients solve their business challenges and come up with solutions that are going to be able to move the needle for them. So yeah, so those stories, in fact, he told not only me, but all three of my boys, which by the way, all three of them are in sales. Probably no surprise. And my son just published a children's book based on the stories that my dad told us when we were young. So The Adventures of Mumbo, Jumbo, and Dumbo. So that kind of makes me cry a little bit because it really shows the legacy and the impact of those stories generation over generation. Cool.
That is really awesome. And yes, touching. And, you do give a shout out to your dad. Not that he was really discouraging you to follow your path, but it just wasn't, women were not seen in sales like they are now. So I thought it was good. You said, nothing against my dad. It was just that time.
Exactly.
So good thing that times have changed, even though you had three boys, but yeah, communication. And you said serving in sales. So interesting that sales has such a bad rep because, you think of the used car lot,
right?
And someone just trying to force something down your throat. And really the right kind of sales that works long-term is when you get to know the customer, they have a problem. You have a solution. What's wrong with that? It's like you said, it's serving them and helping them in a lot of different ways. So,
it's actually why women are so good at sales. Not that men aren't. I'm not trying to put anybody into boxes, but I do believe that, and you mentioned this earlier, that women do have the innate skills to be successful at sales. And it's not just my opinion, right? The numbers and the data back that up. And I do believe that's because women are, they're relationship oriented, they're natural problem solvers. So I do believe that we have the core skills to really, really take sales to the next level.
It's interesting because I think I'm on my 30th or so interview, and I've only had one person really reject the fact that there is a difference between men and women, which is interesting because, I mean, there are differences. Of course, we're different. I mean, we just watched Caitlin Clark last night. Oh my God. These women are so awesome at basketball. It's amazing. But if they were out playing men who are twice their size pretty much, no, they would not be able to compete. So there are differences, but yes, I think some of them work in a positive way toward women. As mothers and family managers, for the most part, although I'm going to give your husband props because he was a stay-at-home dad for quite a while, but our brains, yeah, good for him. Plus, he's a Northern Italian cook. I'm so jealous.
Yes, thankfully, because to be honest, Kay, he, I think, did a better job than I could have as a stay-at-home mom. He had more of the temperament. I mean, when I was home and I was focused and I was really involved in my children's lives. But, he enabled me to actually excel in my career. And, I was off traveling the world and entertaining clients and being the primary breadwinner. And, he was doing diapers and laundries and PTO meetings and schlepping the kids to, all of their sports and activities. And so, I give him props every single day because I couldn't have done a better job. And I'll tell you, when he did it, our kids now my oldest is 29. I have a 27 and a 25-year-old now, 3 boys. And men were not staying at home, right? Like
that had to be unusual. I was going to say, you flipped the script before it got flipped.
Before it flipped, right? But I do think that it's had a very positive impact on our boys. They're definitely allies. They're advocates for diversity, equity, inclusion. They have the utmost respect for women. And I think, being a part of a reverse household, was really different. In fact, sometimes they had to even defend it because it was strange, right? People just didn't understand it, and what we were doing. But it worked for us. I'm not saying that it would work for everyone, but it worked for us. And thank goodness he can cook, because I cannot cook. I'm terrible. I do breakfast better than him. I actually do a pretty mean lox, eggs, and onions, or, cheesy eggs. But other than that, when I met him in the British West Indies, and
there sounds like another story there.
Oh, it is. So I met him in the British West Indies. He was actually the executive chef working for Club Med Turquoise. And I went there on vacation on my own. I was living in Pennsylvania. I had been relocated there to work as vice president of sales, and was coming up into Thanksgiving. And my mom actually said to me, I was 34 and unmarried, had a couple of engagements, false starts, but never had been married. And she was like, well, you're going to spend Thanksgiving alone. Why don't you just book a trip to Club Med or something? Kind of like, don't all 34-year-old losers, women, do that?
Hint,
like,
hint.
oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm like, that's brilliant. So that was on a Tuesday. On a Friday, it was on a plane, and I met him there. And so we don't have time to go into the whole story of how it actually evolved into the two of us getting married, and we're going on our 30-year wedding anniversary this year, and we're going to be renewing our vows. But when he moved back from Club Med to move in with me in Pennsylvania, the only thing that I had in my refrigerator was wine, lean cuisines, and nail polish. And
I saw that in your book. I'm like, Why do you put nail polish on the fridge?
Oh no, because it lasts longer.
Does it?
It does.
I'll have to try it.
Oh my gosh.
Not that,
Yeah,
you can see I'm pretty low maintenance on.
it was a trick my mom taught me. But yeah, so that was it. And he's been cooking ever since. He was mortified.
Today's podcast is sponsored by the acclaimed book, Uncopyable Sales Secrets, How to Create an Unfair Advantage and Outsell Your Competition by Kay Miller. If you want to make more sales, you need to read this book. We'll even get you started with a free download of the first 2 chapters. Go to uncopyablesales.com/chapters to grab this offer right now.
So let's kind of shift into what you have done in your career, like you said, as often the only woman in the room. How have you leveraged your thought process as a woman? Just, give the listeners some of your hot tips so that we can
I've said it, quite a few times, and I'll say it again and I'll scream it from the rooftops, is that the thing about being the only woman in the room is that you're the only woman in the room. So think about that, right? So for me, early in my career, I felt as though I had to behave more like a man. In fact, there were sales books that recommended that in order for women to be successful in sales, that you had to act more like a man. And, early in the career, and even still today, things were, deals were getting done on the golf course or in bars or in, I don't know, sports stadiums, wherever it was. And that just wasn't comfortable for me. And it felt inauthentic. And authenticity is absolutely a key to success and in sales. And so I opted to shift gears, and I learned very early on that being a woman was actually my competitive differentiator, and my unique approach to selling was refreshing. And it definitely resonated well, particularly because at the time, early on, not only was sales very male dominated, but the buyer group were very male dominated as well. And so I believe that, in comparison to my male counterparts, I definitely had a different approach that resonated well with prospective buyers. Now today, fast forward, I think it's interesting because, one, women are still underrepresented in sales. We know that, particularly women from diverse communities are way underrepresented, and we have to fix that. But the buyer groups are changing. So as women, at least this is what I've seen, and I don't think it's unique just to the BPO industry, but as women are starting to progress into higher level decision-making positions within companies, that the buyer groups are changing. And I believe that sales organizations need to reflect and mirror your buyer groups. And so not only is, adding more women into your sales team the right thing to do, right? And it's good for business, but I think that it's absolutely critical, given some of the dynamics, because female buyers don't respond well to a stereotypical used car salesman type of approach. So, yeah.
Right. And that you make 2 great points. Of course, so my book is Uncopyable Sales Secrets. And like we talked about, I also started out as one of very few women in an automotive exhaust company. And that's where I got my nickname Muffler Mama, because since I didn't know anything about cars, I asked one of my customers to help me install a muffler. But being a woman in that field also was an advantage, because I was the only woman who would walk through the door. And, maybe I probably was held to a higher standard at first. People were skeptical, but I think that my customers who were 99% male at the time really appreciated that diversity, really appreciated my style. I mean, I was very conscientious. I followed up, I probed into their problems, all the things you're supposed to do that maybe women are better at naturally.
Yeah.
And your other point, someone else brought this up, that now as the workforce, all of it is becoming more integrated. That we still have a long way to go. But
Yeah.
yes, a sales team with women on it reflects your customers.
Right.
So they can, yeah, you're right. I think that's a great point, that you need to be able to relate to your customers on their level. And that could be a huge help.
I agree 100%. 100%.
Let's talk about, you had a couple things I thought were great. We've talked a little bit about leveraging your skills as a woman.
Mhm.
Also, confidence, overcoming fear is a big one, I think, for women, for men too. So talk about how you feel like you can best build your confidence as a salesperson.
Confidence, particularly for women, is definitely a challenge. And for me, I found that as I learned more, right, and got more experience, that that continued to build my confidence over time. As I began closing deals and having success in sales, that continued to build my confidence over time. I'm I love to read. I'm a lifelong learner. So I think if there's an area that you don't feel confident in, then it's good to lean in and try to learn as much as possible about that particular area. It's good to find a mentor and sponsor within organizations. It's good to network and learn from other people. I did a post today. I know it'll be a while since this is post, but I was talking about asking for help and how difficult it is quite often for women to ask for help. And for me, I was just, and even today, it still continues to be a challenge for me, where, women are socialized to believe that if we can't do it all, and if we have to ask for help, that we are a failure, and that ties into confidence, right? But I've realized that asking for help in areas where you may need that kind of assistance is really important. And then as you get more confidence, you can do more on your own. I don't know. That's what works for me.
Right. And those are great points. As I've gotten older and we've found out we're about a month apart in age,
Yeah.
I really enjoy, as you do, mentoring younger women.
Yeah.
It's so fun to get their fresh perspective. I swear several women that I mentor, I always tell them, I learn more from you than you learn from me. So yes, don't be afraid to ask for help, because I think that has also shifted a lot. When I first started in sales, I felt like the women, we were competing with each other. We felt like there was
Right.
pie and there's only room for so many, right? And
And it was way worse back then. But I have to say that while it's gotten a little bit better, I still feel we have a ways to go, that women often aren't kind to each other. And we still are being, because the number of women in these top level positions are still relatively limited. And so I'm a really big advocate for women supporting each other, and that we need to, in order to really achieve success in the long run, we need to amplify each other's voices and uplift each other. I'm a big proponent of collaboration over competition. And I think that's the only way that we're really going to be able to move the needle. Women being unkind to each other is not helping any of us. The other thing I believe that we need to do is we can't do it alone, right? Like, so not only do women need to come together and support each other and collaborate with each other, but we also have to collaborate with our male allies because at the end of the day, men still dominate in some of these higher level decision-making positions. And we need to leverage allyship to achieve,
Right.
success. So collaboration is key.
I have been super pleased. I shouldn't say surprised, but at the support I'm getting from men for this podcast. Many of the guests that I'm booking are suggestions and recommendations for men. They are listening to it. They're promoting and sharing it. So that's awesome. But like you said, sometimes maybe there is some of that throwback feeling of we're competing with each other that we really need to get over, totally over, because I just posted something on LinkedIn the other day by Serena Williams, and I can't remember the exact phrasing, but yes, we're all better when women support each other. So that's really key. And to speak to the confidence, the point about confidence, as you said, part of it is just that you have to do things that are scary, that you don't feel comfortable with. That's where that whole muffler thing came from. I thought I have to just dive in, because when you're really good at what you do, then you're going to have more confidence. And by reading manuals and studying and all the trainings that they put you through, it's still not the experience that might give you that confidence. So
the only thing I would add to that, sorry to interrupt, the only thing I would add to that too is to realize as you're going through the learning process, you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay, right? Because every time, failure is absolutely critical to the learning process. And the more you fail, the more you learn. If you're not failing, you're probably not pushing yourself hard enough. And so, in fact, I always say that the definition of fail is a first attempt in learning. And so as you go through that, I think you just need to give yourself some grace and not fear failing, because as you move through that, then you will gain more confidence along the way.
Yeah, that's great. Failure is the teacher, right? Also, the term comes to mind, fail fast. My husband and I we're a golfing family. Our daughter played golf through college, and so we're big fans. And we're watching this show called First Swing, which has been very interesting, following PGA Tour players. Now there's this whole thing. I don't know whether you know about live golf. There's a lot of drama going on. But what's so interesting is listening to the coaches and even the sports psychologists saying the best golfers have to just forget the bad swing that they had. That hole is gone. And just move forward. And sports has so many great analogies, of course. And I know that you were an athlete as a child and young woman. Yeah.
Yeah. And I learned some very important lessons there, right? It's that, I was a competitive athlete. I was an alternate on the U.S. equestrian team, for eventing. And, when you're competing, you're getting judged. There's a judge, when you're at a horse show. And there were times when I would go in and I would jump a course. I'd be like, oh my gosh, was the best course I ever done. I'm definitely going to win the class. And I didn't get a ribbon, or, vice versa. I would go in and say, oh my God, I just totally sucked. Right. Like, that was awful, to the point where sometimes I'd put my horse away and just be like, and then they'd be
sulking, and then you find
and then it's like, oh, you got a ribbon or you won the class. It was like, what? So I realized very early on that that you can't rely necessarily on other people to give you validation of whether you're good or not good. that you have to, my biggest competition is with myself. So anyway, that kind of took us a little down a different rabbit hole. But
right, because, I want this podcast to be casual and fun and interesting. And I think that was all of the above. And like I said, I'm really intrigued. In fact, if anyone's listening, or Heidi, if you happen to know, I would love to talk with a sports psychologist. There was a very powerful episode that we just watched where, and she was an older gal. I shouldn't say older because she's probably our age. Named Julie, who helped one of the players named Wyndham Clark just absolutely turn his game around. And I got snippets of the things that she would tell him. I thought I would love to have someone like that on my podcast. So
just to go full circle on that, and is that, if I lost or if I didn't get a ribbon or if I won, at the end of the day, it's behind you, right? You have to go on to your next course, your next show, and if you dwell on it, then you could really get in your head. It can impact your performance for the long term. Same thing in sales, right? I mean, sales, there's a lot of rejection in sales, so if you dwell on that no, or that loss, or that hang up, or whatever it is, it will negatively impact your performance moving forward. I mean, maybe that's why I sort of became a master compartmentalization, realizing that it's just business. It's not personal, but I think that's a very important life lesson.
I'm glad that you agree. And believe it or not, our time is over. I knew it would fly by. This has been such a fun and enlightening conversation. Anyone listening, I really encourage you to get Heidi's book, Heels to Deals: How Women Are Dominating in Business to Business Sales. Such successful and very wise women with great advice. And also, like I said, you do a great job of throwing in your philosophy too, which is super helpful. So Heidi, thank you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
I appreciate you having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncopyable Women in Sales, your source for secrets you can use to make more sales. Check the show notes for links and contact information. And if you enjoyed the podcast, please spread the word by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a 5-star review. You can always learn more by going to uncopyablesales.com/podcast. Until next time, go out and supercharge your sales like a true uncopyable rock star.